Well, I started taking my own pictures just out of a need because I didn't want to keep using photographers anymore, right? Like we were talking about, I felt like always having to collaborate with people and work on other people's time frames, take other people's creativity into account, pay like hundreds and hundreds of dollars every time. It just started becoming really uninteresting to me, and I felt really detached from the whole process, and like my vision wasn't being carried through. And one of my favorite photographers, who I was using quite a bit at the time, moved out of town, and I just thought, well, I'll just give it a go. I'm just gonna pick up a camera and see if I can get it. And I did. The first time, for what I wanted, it was exactly perfect. And so I just started to take my own pictures, figure out editing. Like I still am really lack knowledge in photography, editing. I don't know how to use Photoshop at all. I've never used Photoshop. And I keep trying to go on and like try to figure out how to use it, and I still can't. So I use all these like strange little like children's editing, like apps and software, and like anything I can get my hands on where it's like really visual and pictures, and and then I just kind of keep playing with all of that editing and lighting, and until it just, to me, until those pictures look like real life. Which is interesting because most people don't think they look like real life. But when I was taking in my stuff to get printed, like for my first show, which was at Molay, and I had gathered a lot of images by this point, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put this together as a show and see if my friend Josh over at Molay will let me do it, and he did. And I also got really into wig making, but not real wigs. It's more like hats, like these big hair pieces and stuff. And so I had that to put in the show as well. So it wasn't just, really one-dimensional pictures. There was like all these props and stuff. But when I took my pictures in to get printed, I didn't want Prism to touch any of, the weird colors and stuff. And so I was showing him some of the images, and I was like, okay, you see this? Like, you see this skin, how it looks like skin color? I don't want you to touch that or manipulate it all. And he was like, you think that looks like skin color? And I was like, you think it doesn't? It's just like two totally different perspectives. And I keep playing with it until I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That looks like real life to me, because that's how I see life. Like, that's how I see people's faces, looking like that. And I just kept, going with it and taking more pictures and learning more. And then I got approached by the 50/50 to do a show, and that was the first time I'd been asked as an artist to, be part of the art community, which was really cool because I've never considered myself to be an artist. A creative person, yes, my whole life, but not like put your stuff in this art show, come on down. And I was like, what do you do? Like, do you have to name the series? Do you, I didn't understand the process. And I shot those three pieces, the Queen, the Rabbit, and Alice, because it was an Alice in Wonderland theme, which was right up my alley. Like, that's perfect. I can totally go with that. And I didn't give them names, and I didn't give the series a name. I'm just totally not into that. It's not for me. I have a hard time picking names at the best of times. If I had picked a name, then I'm attached to that name, and then I'm not going to like it in 2 weeks, and forevermore that series is going to be called like something totally lame that I came up with, right? So I think the girl at the 50/50 just like was, put Alice, Rabbit, whatever underneath. And I sold 2 pieces. It was amazing. One to an artist. And And so leading up to the art show at the 50/50, I had my first show at Mole, and it was received well. And so then I approached these guys at Bean, because it's like my favorite coffee shop. You know, I'm always coming here. And I was like, you know, do you mind? I've got this show hanging at Mole. Would you hang it up here? And they did. And then I think after my first year of doing that, then the 50/50 contacted me. And yeah, I think it gave me a little bit of incentive to keep going. Like, I figure as long as people aren't like horrendously appalled at what I'm putting on the walls, that I'm happy. You know what I mean? As long as it's not like so awful, that I'm just gonna keep going, right? And so this is our third year of showing at Mole and Bean, and you know, they really, both the spots really like it, and we kind of do Mole June of every year, and then normally with Bean, I go about 3 months after that. They hang at Mole for quite a while, and then they're at Bean for a month. But this year it just ended up that the same show that was hanging at Mole in June is now here for January, just because of the timing and stuff. And each year, it's nice to have that little deadline that. You know, I try to get new, fresh material together and try coming up with something a little bit different. And I have usually, you know, 4 months or something to do it, because I never take pictures in the spring and summer. I only take pictures in the winter, maybe a little bit of spring, but not bright spring. I need dark, right? So I like just really intensely take pictures for like 4 months. It's like a photo shoot a weekend all the time, and then, you know, immerse myself and do it really quickly, and then get these up. So with this show, it was the first time that I had reused some images. Like, I reused most of the images from the Ila show at the 50/50, but I had kind of gone into them and explored them a little bit more. So the images at the Ila show were still pretty, I don't want to use the word raw, because they were far from raw, but they were just as they were. And then I really got into like some more graphics and stuff, and like playing with really turning those into like prints that look like, you know, paintings or something, and using more imagery, and I don't even know the words, I'll just do it, you know, like splitting images and like overlapping them. And I got really into that this year, and like lots of geometrical shapes over top, and just how those two would work together and sit together. So I kind of redid those and released some of those images different. Like, you'll see these ones are quite different than the ones that were at the 50/50. Plus I added a bunch more new material. And this is kind of, I think, going to be my most colorful year. Like, I really wanted to play with like color and, you know, movement, and just make it really bright and fun. And now I'm over it, completely over it. Now I've like explored that to death, and I'm really looking forward to taking some pictures, going back to a bit more film, and just taking darker, deeper, more natural shots. So I'm going to try to switch gears for next year, because, you know, I've done it. It's done. Now I'm over it, and time to move on to something else. I don't want to, you know, I want to be careful to not do the same thing over and over again, because my aesthetic is so what it is. You know what I mean? Like, my images, I think, end up looking sometimes just too dangerously branded, or, you know, the same. And so I want to keep challenging myself and coming up with different things. I don't want to, you know, just put forth the same stuff with different models every year. I want to, you know, I want to explore and use different mediums. I like to use different mediums in the shows. This is the first time that I've done it where it's just pictures. But next year I have some good ideas that aren't just pictures. Yeah, I like to add some textures and different elements into those photographs and have them be a little more dimensional. The process is, for me, is like the unknown. I never know. I have no plans or expectations out of myself, and I absolutely couldn't achieve that anyways if I tried, because I have tried a couple times to do that, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna get it to look like this, and absolute fail every time, but beautiful fails sometimes, right? So I sometimes have a bit of a concept or an idea, and, you know, inspiration is from everything but what I'm doing. Like, I never will find inspiration for photography or fashion from photography or fashion or art, you know? Like, I'll find it from, God, childhood stories, like old movies, you know, just weird little things where I'm like, oh, that would look neat. So I maybe have a couple little jump off points, but I have no plan, because I'm absolutely like the most disorganized person ever. And everything comes together really last minute. I have, you know, my house is just filled with lots of, you know, secondhand junk, right? And like little vintage finds and stuff. So I find some people that I think I would like to take a picture of, and I never use models. I always just use regular girls who I think have an interesting, you know, look to them or something, and it just happens really quickly. It's like 1 week, and, you know, I book it and I get them in and sit them down and I take the pictures in like an hour, and I just kind of throw stuff on them and try a whole bunch of different things, you know, with like just a trunk of stuff until something makes sense. And a lot of times I'm at home like the night before, you know, leaving everything until the last minute, like glue gunning stuff together and like making little things and little, you know, flower hats and all sorts of stuff. But I'm like, I do it so unprofessionally. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. It's just like kindergarten kid or something, you know. I just like glue and paste, and most of the time the props and things that I use would like fall apart if you touch them, you know, because they're just not structurally sound at all. But do they need to be? They're not going to work, you know. They're not going to do anything with them. They just literally sit there, and then it kind of just all comes together from that, you know. It comes together from like the mood that the person I'm taking the picture of is in, and, you know, what we end up putting them in, and the lighting that day, and the energy in the room of the other people, and then my favorite is just like going home and getting all of those images, and then I can just be on my own and play with those, and, you know, pick them out and just, you know, play with the color, and but it just kind of comes out, you know, like I never have a plan or an expectation of how it's going to turn out. It just becomes, I'm just a facilitator for that image to, you know, to become what it's going to be, really. I think as far as what I want people to see, or you know, what I'm putting out there, I don't think that there is a specific story that I'm trying to put out. I know that there isn't a specific story, but I think for me, each image says something, or it brings on some emotion, right? And for me it does, so hopefully for other people it does a little bit as well, but I originally started taking pictures that I thought were really pretty, and I find that they're all a little bit sad and a little bit dark, which wasn't my intention. It's just kind of what came through, and so I feel like the images are all a little bit vulnerable, and interesting and maybe a little bit confusing. But that story just kind of comes through in like one little, split difference between one frame and the next frame. And, as you know, when you take pictures, you just get, especially when you're using digital, like a million. And how do you even choose between all of these? How does one say something and one doesn't say something, right? So when I'm looking at all of those, and then there's just one where it's like a tilt of the head or her eyes a little, there's just something about it that just like, it's a little bit heartbreaking, or, makes me feel really emotional and connected and like in love with that piece. And then I just think everybody has to see how, heartbreaking and beautiful this is, and interesting and different. And those are the images that I put out there, the ones that just come out, that just pop right out and say something. And there's no right or wrong, and there's no formula, and it's all just, circles and blurred boundaries, and then that's it. You can just, let that image speak to you and say something, and then it's of its own. It's like a mom, right? Like, I have kids, and you give birth to something, so you're part of that process, that creative process, but then once it's out there, it's its own. It's done, separate from you, And I think the ones that are really special to me are the ones that are totally its own, that have nothing to do with my input. It's just, I just happen to be there to capture something special in that moment. So on my Tumblr account, I was posting all my photos, which, in the very beginning, which I just thought were really, pretty portraits. I never say photography or photographer, I just say I like to take portraits, right? And they were being reblogged by really dark goth Tumblrs, which was surprising to me because I didn't really see them that way. But again, once you put it out there, it's for everybody's interpretation and to do what they want with it. And I guess I was also a little impressed that people saw that much darkness, out of these pretty little snapshots. And photographing girls, I do photograph girls and not boys. And I even have a really gorgeous, handsome husband that I just don't even take pictures of. I don't know. I guess I'm really far more attracted to, just inspired by the female form or femininity, but not even femininity necessarily. I don't know what to do with taking a picture of a boy unless he was in drag. I really would love to get into that. That's like my next thing. Guys in drag, love it. Because I also really, I also like my photos of girls to look not classically sexy or pretty, but masculine. So maybe, I don't know, I never thought of this before, maybe I just heard it on an art show, but I guess I like that struggle with like the ultra feminine and a little bit of that strength and masculinity. I like my subjects to look really strong, even if they're looking weak, still have that, there's some strength in there somewhere. And maybe with the man, it's just so like obviously strong. There isn't as much of a struggle or something. I'm not sure what it is, but taking pictures of men just doesn't inspire me at all. It's it's just females or males that look like females. yeah, there's, I don't know. I don't even know if I ever will. I tried. I used a couple guys in my salon, and I used my husband, and because there was one show where I was like, oh my God, I had like, my first show, I had like 1,000 images and there was nothing of a man. And so at the I felt like I needed to, somehow represent the male side. So I took some pictures of the men, but it just, I don't know. I'm going to try it. Maybe if I put some frilly stuff on there. I tried to, you're not going to want to put this in your video anyways, but it's pretty funny. I tried to put an ascot on my husband once to do it, and he said he looks gayer than cum on a mustache. And that was it. I was like, come on, it looks good. Best line. He's got the best one-liners. But yeah, women constantly inspired by women, and strong female faces, but not boys. They don't have enough hair maybe or something. I don't know what it is. Not soft enough.